knitting two-color mitered square half triangles. Hello, I'm Kristen and welcome back to Studio Knit. Continuing my mitered square knitting series, I'm sharing how to knit these two-color mitered squares. They're half triangles using the CDD spine seam. These little duotone squares are perfect for adding some really fun colorwork designs to your projects. These two-color mitered squares are super versatile. You can choose any two yarn colors to create unique designs. They're easy to memorize after knitting up just a few. They lay flat due to their all-knit construction. In my last video, I shared how to knit this square with just one solid yarn color. But today we're taking two different yarn colors and joining them together in the middle. We're going to continue the technique of a slip stitch edge around the sides, and that will help joining your squares as easy as possible. And using that card deck that I shared in my last video, I came up with some different patterns, and I'll be sharing more of these design ideas along with how to join your squares and adding a garter stitch border in future videos. So if you're excited to start knitting these up, please hit that like button and subscribe. So let's knit them up. We're beginning by casting on, and we are casting on an odd number of stitches. I'm going to switch to this super bulky yarn so you can best see exactly how it knits up with the thicker yarn and larger knitting needles. We have two yarn colors, color A and color B. And for your knitting supplies, we have knitting needles appropriately sized for your yarn. I'm using size 13 here, along with scissors and a tapestry needle. To figure out exactly how many stitches you'll need to cast on for the weight of your yarn and the desired size of your square, head on over to my website, Studio Knit. I have a cheat sheet for you. We have yarn in DK number 3, worsted number 4, bulky number 5, and super bulky number 6. And then depending on the size of the square you'd like to knit up, I have your stitch count for you. So in this example, I'm going to knit up a tiny little 3 by 3 inch square with this super bulky yarn. So color A will have 7 stitches cast on, and color B will have 6 stitches cast on. And we begin by casting on color B. So in this example, that is my white yarn here. And I'm casting on 6 stitches onto my needle, and then just slide it down the needle and cast on the second yarn color, color A. We'll have 7 stitches cast on. And we're going to use that slip stitch edge that I shared in my previous video. This really helps when you're joining the squares together later on. In doing so, we begin with our yarn in front, and we are going to slip the very first stitch onto our needle purlwise. We're on the right side of our work, and we bring the yarn between the first and second stitches to the back of our work, and then knit until you have 2 stitches remaining of color A on your needle. Now it's time to knit the center double decrease. With color A here, we're slipping 1 stitch with the yarn in back, and then we have both color yarns here. So colors A and B, we're going to knit 2 together. We're knitting those 2 stitches together. Then we're taking our color A and we're passing the first stitch over, and that is decreasing 2 stitches here on this row. Now before we continue knitting, we're going to twist our yarns. So we're placing color B over color A, take color A to the front, and then we can continue knitting with color B all the way down the row. And remember, the written instructions are always available over on my website, Studio Knit for you. And you can see we have a yarn tail here in the middle for color B. The yarn tail for color A is over on the side. And now switching to the wrong side of our work, We begin with color B. Again, we're going to slip that first stitch with the yarn in front. Bring the yarn to the back and then knit all the way to the end of color B. We're going to twist those yarns again. So we now place color A over color B. We bring color B to the front and then just continue knitting all the way down the row with color A. We continue knitting these 2 rows until we begin our final row that has 5 stitches remaining on our needle. It's the same pattern, but let's do it together. We're taking color A, slipping 1 stitch with the yarn in front, bringing the yarn to the back, slip 1 stitch purlwise, knitting the 2 stitches together, passing 1 stitch over, and knitting that final stitch. With these 3 stitches remaining on our needle, we cut both yarn colors and thread our tapestry needle with color A. Then removing our knitting needle, just thread the yarn tail through the front of these 3 open stitches, cinch it up, and we are weaving in all of our yarn tails. And while they may seem reversible, with this technique, the right side is showing a raised seam and the wrong side here has a flatter texture. For best results, I highly recommend wet painting each square. It helps match them in size to line up perfectly when you're seaming them together. Now please feel free to experiment with different colors and layouts. Mix and match your yarn squares to create something totally unique and completely you. Once your squares are blocked, we're going to sew them together. We're using the mattress stitch and you'll have this beautiful sturdy project ready to go. I'm going to be sharing my techniques to join your squares in my next video from this series. I've really been enjoying designing different patterns in this mitered square series, so please make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel to get notified of all of the upcoming videos. And check out this fun knitting video next, and I will see you there.